News Talk 820 WBAP now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset, y'all. 800-288-WBAP is our number. 800-288-9227. This is the Chris Crock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP now on FM at 93.3. 800-288-WBAP is our number. 800-288-9227, hour number 2. Condoleezza Rice, of course, one of the highest-ranking officials in once the highest-ranking woman in the United States government, period, is, of course, heading up Stanford University and has been on and on for decades. She was interviewed with she doesn't do interviews much. But this one was a knockdown, bang-out, amazing quote from her. I'm going to play for you in a second. She was being interviewed at the Ronald Reagan Foundation, and she was asked about school choice, and this woman hit it out of the park. Grand slam. Here's what she said.
So are you for school choice or not? We already have a choice system in education. If you are of means, you will move to a district where the schools are good and the houses are expensive, like Palo Alto, California. If you go across the street from Stanford, Palo Alto High has a performance arts center that looks like a smaller version of Stanford's. If you're really wealthy, you will send your kids to private schools. So who's stuck in failing neighborhood schools? Poor kids. A lot of them minority kids. So how can you say you're for civil rights? How can you say you're for the poor when you're condemning those children to not being able to read? By the time they're in 3rd grade, they're never going to read. So if you want to say that school choice and vouchers and charter schools are destroying the public schools, fine. You write that editorial in the Washington Post, but then don't send your kids to Sidwell Friends.
Sidwell Friends is where former President Hussein Obama sent his daughters, and where many of the most elite, well-off folks in Washington, D.C. send their kids to for a private school. But yet, many of them refuse to allow vouchers for poor kids to go to school. U.S. Senator Tim Scott, who very well could be the next vice president of the United States of America under Trump. Senator Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina, African-American, also said it's a civil rights issue as well. He said that, quote, "I can't think of anything actually more racist than trapping our poor black kids in the failing schools in these big blue cities dominated by a supermajority of radical progressives who are running the cities and ruining the cities and destroying the schools." Actually, he said running the cities and destroying the schools. Ted Cruz called the choice the civil rights issue of the 21st century, and I totally agree. I didn't know how important they are, how precious school choices and vouchers are, until I was in my first full-time talk show in 2000 in Jefferson City, Missouri, and I saw a news story that showed women, black women in inner city Cleveland, I believe it was, crying when they found out their son won a voucher. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. It was in Cleveland or Cincinnati, I can't remember. And it was like a mom that is with her son, and he gets drafted, number 1 draft pick of the night, and he goes with the team of the dreams, and mom's crying. You know what I mean? That's exactly what it was. To see a mother cry that her son gets to go to a school that will actually nurture him and grow him is insane. That won me over that moment I saw that. Those women deserve the right for their child to be get the best education he can get. It is a civil rights issue of our time. I've been saying that for 23 years, and I could not agree more. May God bless these women, and they deserve it, and the men and all of them. These kids deserve what my kids have. We ain't rich, we ain't upper class or anything like that, but we raised our kids in a homeschool environment, and we took a big hit financially. My wife didn't work full time. She barely worked for years while we did this. We took a financial hit. We could have had much more money, but we chose to do it this way because we felt that's what was best for our children, and it sure as heck was. It was a home run grand slam with these kids. Straight A students, incredible. Way better than we ever did. What do you think about this? Do you agree, though, that a lack of school choice is a civil rights issue? And what would you do? What would you do if you had school choice? What would you do, or what do you think others would do if they get school choice? And in the great state of Texas, 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Do you agree that a lack of school choice in the state of Texas and in this country is a civil rights issue? And what would you do if you got school choice? If you got a voucher to either homeschool or to go to a private school, to go to whatever school you want to, because you felt that was right for your kid. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. You don't have to be poor to think this is great. You don't have to be an African-American or a Hispanic or a minority child to think this is great, because this is great. And Governor Abbott did an amazing thing recently. One of his biggest focuses in the off season of the session, which is going to come back up in this January, literally 6 months away, because we had like a record number of special sessions after special sessions, so that's why I went, instead of it's normal every 2 years, it went like a year and a half. I don't even know. I was shocked when we had a state representative from Denton County, Richard Hayes, I believe is his name. He called in on the show last night for something else, and he said that, this next session starts in 6 months. I'm like, already? Yes. Guess what Governor Abbott's been doing intensely? What is really one of his number one things he's been doing that hasn't gotten too much attention. It's gotten some. He has been firing and going around and making sure that every Republican state representative and every Republican state senator that stands in the way of us passing school choice is fired, by endorsing and helping to contribute anything he can through his efforts, showing up on their campaign trails, loudly and publicly endorsing them. I'm sure he also helped try to get some campaign money their way. And he did it. He literally did it. And I could not be more proud of him. He ain't perfect. Trust me. I've been criticizing him on and off for years. But this was an amazing accomplishment. And we're going to have school choice come January. And I thank goodness for that. And it could not come quicker. Let me share some details on this, how bad this is. Research shows, this is from Education News, va.org. I think it's out of Virginia. And it says, research has shown being a proficient reader by early elementary school is vital, since those who aren't or who don't get that are more likely to struggle academically. If you're not a proficient reader by early elementary school, you're likely to more likely to struggle academically and drop out of school and suffer reduced earning potential as an adult. This is destroying. Can you imagine how many inner city kids or poor kids have had their education and their futures have been, honestly, I swear to you, destroyed because of the environment they've been put in for school through no fault to the parents' own? My gosh, this is how you lift up a population, and how sickening, disgusting, and angering that people, a party, maybe a political party that claims to care about people and minority people and education the most, and teachers union, how dare they take this opportunity away from children they claim to care about? It's just like with the COVID stuff, where the teachers unions shut down COVID, and the National Teachers Union shut down classrooms and saying our teachers are going to be safe and they need this and that. They made up a bogus BS rule that Dr. Fauci, the corrupt guy who should be in jail, Dr. Fauci admitted that was a fake rule. There was no such thing. It had no science basis. All right, we have time for one. All right, let's go to Jason in Mesquite. You're on WBAP. Hey, Jason.
Yeah, hey, Chris, thanks for taking my call. Okay, we homeschool, and our property taxes keep going up, and we don't get anything to show for it. Now, we make the choice to homeschool, but it would be amazing, and it would help our family a lot if we could get some relief on some of our tuition and the books that we have to buy for our kids, so that we're not having to pay the property taxes and the school costs and bear the full brunt of it.
That is exactly the same stuff we went through. I mean, we spent sometimes $2,000 to $4,000 a year per kid. And I always wished there was something, a tax break I could get or something, and we never did, and we did it anyways, and we would never change it for the world. It was worth every sacrifice, and I wouldn't gain anything anymore. My daughter is 17, she'll be 18, and she's going to dual credit at one of the colleges here in one of the community colleges, so we won't gain anything from that, but I will gladly support sending your family vouchers for each child that you have in the Jason clan in Mesquite.
Yes, thank you. I totally agree, Chris.
And do you agree this is a civil rights issue?
Well, I think it's definitely something that would help break down a lot of the barriers that we have in our country. That's for sure. Economic barriers, and the barriers that many people say are, racial barriers. I think a lot of that would be eased by allowing people to have choice.
That's exactly right. Appreciate your call, Jason. Wish your kids the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wish you the best for your sanity with homeschooling, which we know that to be true, too. You know what was amazing about that? And we're going to take Tate's call in Burleson coming up next. I'll tell you what was amazing about that time coming up next. Also, so much more on this, but I'm going to tell you what was so amazing about that time when we did choose to homeschool. And you don't have to if you can't do it, if it's not economicable. If it's not economicable, yeah, to homeschool my kid, economicable. If it's not economical for you, etc., not feasible, that's fine. But I'll tell you what it did for us and how we have so much joy reflecting on that. Miss it with all our hearts. But we'll talk to Tate in Burleson next. My question, and he's an educator. This is going to be really good. Will they help? Will vouchers help? The first teacher on the phone, plus your call next, 800-288-WBAP. Chris Crock Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. All right, vouchers. Condoleezza Rice says it is a civil rights issue, and if you're against it, don't send your kid to a private school. None of that stuff. And if you do, then you're a hypocrite. It is a civil rights issue of today. Do you agree that a lack of school choice is a civil rights issue? And what would you do if we do get school choice, which we will get it next year, thanks to our great governor and the legislature? What would you do, or what do you think others would do if we get that school choice? By the way, two lines open, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. That's 800-288-9227. In the third grade, I'll never forget my sons. We would rotate. Sometimes I do most of the homeschooling. Sometimes she would. And when I was at our sister station, I did afternoons for about 2 years at WBAP, at KLIF, about 5 feet down the hall from me here. I was doing my son's work during the day, I think it was, or maybe it was here at night at WBAP. I can't even remember. But when he was in third grade, I did history, and I'll never forget goosebumps sometimes. Do you understand how insane it is that this happened as we're reading the actual things happening? And I'm like, this is totally God that did this right here, ordained. And then my daughter's math, and I remember celebrating every time she got it right. She was so frustrated. She was so difficult with it. And every time we got a problem right, I celebrated, a little celebration. It was whatever it took to get my daughter over that hump. And now she has an amazing tutor that'll help her with her one college math class, and that'll be it. She'll be done like I was. One and done. One algebra class, college algebra. Jeanette in Fort Worth, you're on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBA. Oh, wait, Tate. Hold on, Jeanette, you stand by. You will be next. But first, I promised Tate in Burleson, a teacher. You're on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBAP. Hello.
Hello. I don't think that the education, the civil rights issue of today is important, but nevertheless, I can't compare it to the civil rights issue. But I do think that the voucher system will not work because the poor and economically disadvantaged kids who receive $8,000 cannot cover a private school education, which will range around $20,000 a semester. So therefore, it's not going to be able to work. Also,
well, I disagree with that. When we did look at private schools and other schools in the Metroplex, 8,000 was more enough. 20,000. I mean, what are you looking at, going to a Hockaday, like the most prestigious school here?
Well, no, the schools I know.
Let me check real fast. Hey, Producer Garrett, real fast, I apologize. Would you double check what Hockaday is? I think it's like $24,000 a year. There ain't no 20. You can go to a Catholic school, even if you're not Catholic, it's still going to give you an amazing education. I can guarantee you should be able to get something for $8,000.
Well, most schools that I'm familiar with, that's not going to cover those costs. Also,
can you give me an example of one school that you're talking about that's 20,000? It's going to be.
Nolan Catholic.
Okay, Noland Catholic. I'll look that up right now. Noland Catholic?
Yes.
Okay, school tuition. Okay. All right, go ahead, sir.
Also, private schools are not held to the same standard as public schools. Public school teachers have to deal with kids with different learning modalities, different behavior issues that we have to contend with. Now, that same kid could take that $8,000, go to a private school, and if that kid not performing, that private school can remove that kid with no issues. We don't have that luxury. Two, private schools are not tested.
Could you say that? Could you say that point again? I apologize. That last point you were saying.
That if a kid who is
okay, I'll just tell you this. I apologize. Just got Hockaday. I apologize real fast. Hockaday is 32 to 38. You said. Okay, that's like the most elite you can get in the entire Metroplex. You know what I mean? So anyways, go ahead, sir.
You're still going to be $16,000 behind. You can't, and as a 12, you're not going to be able to afford that.
Well, Hockaday is, again, that's insane, obviously. Go ahead, sir.
So private schools are not required to take a state assessment like public education students are. So how are we going to know if a public school kid who transferred to a private school is actually learning?
I know how.
They're not required to take a state assessment.
I know how. First of all, would you like your kids do you have children in school right now?
I do. I
Okay,
have two
good.
graduated from college.
Okay, how old? So do you have any in like high school right now or whatever?
Yes, one will be a senior, one will be a sophomore.
Okay. Do they go to public or private right now?
They're in public.
Okay. Would you like private if you could?
We did private school to get the foundation, and once they got into first grade, we sent them to public schools.
Now, why did you do private for the foundation?
Because when I was going to school, we had early child development. Republicans removed that. So now we have to finance it to send our kids to private school, starting in pre-K, so they can get that foundation. Mm-hmm. So we know how this thing, again, your stats are right. Once you get the kids early, get them to read early, then the rest of their years will be easy.
Right.
That's what we need to emphasize instead of vouchers.
Okay.
Early childhood development.
I'm looking at K through 8 for a Catholic school. For example, in Richardson, it's $93.50 a year for a member, and it's $11.5 for a non-member. That's just like St. Paul Catholic Classical School, for example. So I don't know if the official number is going to end up being 8,000. But I think it needs to be reasonable for somebody. So, but listen, if you sent your kid to private school, why wouldn't you want to send somebody else's kid to private school too?
My first statement was I don't have an issue with vouchers. I think it's a great idea and concept,
right?
But it's not feasible
because of the amount of money. Because of the amount of money.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Well, I would be happy to look around at some more of these, and I need to double check what the limit's going to be. They haven't passed the bill yet. So I don't know what it'll officially be. As you know, next year is when it's going to pass, and we'll see. Are you sure you want to deny people the right to go to a private school if it works for them and it's better for them? And what about a voucher to go to a better public school that's 10 miles away where the kid can learn in an environment where people aren't in such a bad way, surrounded by bad other students who don't care or are trouble?
I have no issue with school choice whatsoever.
There you go. As long as it can pay for it, right?
Yeah, that's capitalism.
Okay, and I think if you're locked into a school that's failing and you're trapped there because of your economic situation, that's a civil right. That's an economic civil right. It's a right. Your civil rights being violated to get a decent education. Tate, thanks for your call. I appreciate it. Okay.
Okay.
Take care. All right. We'll get some tuition intel coming up next. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Guess who was against the school voucher program the most? Are you ready for this? Rural Republicans. Rural Republicans, of all people. And guess who they were getting money from? So, for those who say, vouchers are not the best, it's not a civil rights issue, I strongly disagree, along with Condoleezza Rice and along with Tim Scott and many others. But the rural Republicans were getting money from the teachers' unions in rural Texas. Why would the teachers' unions be voting to? Why would the teachers' union be voting for to stop rural Texas from having vouchers? Isn't that crazy? Okay, the last voucher proposal, there's no official voucher proposal because I know our last caller there, Tate, was saying he would be for it, but the money's puny. It's not enough. The last proposal was $10,000, not $8,800 or $8,000 or $8,500. It was actually $10,000. But here's the other thing too. There's no amount, so you can't say you're against it if we don't have the amount. And I think it's fair to say whatever the average private school tuition is in the region, and in the metro area is what it should be. Fair enough. Whatever the average tuition is for DFW is what it should be. And it's going to be cheaper, I would assume, in rural areas. But, yeah, it is a civil rights issue to me. Okay, 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Warren and Waco, you're on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBAP.
Well, good afternoon or evening. Yes, it is a civil rights issue. When people who choose to homeschool or pay for a private school have to pay twice for their child's education. I know you can get a much, much better private education than you can a public education. And it's just the facts of the way it is.
Right.
Look at the graduates from the private school. So the argument that we don't have a measuring stick for those in private schools, they have their own. They have their own measuring sticks, and they'll, usually there is better communication with the parent. And when a parent is actually paying for it, they're going to hold their child more accountable.
Right.
If it's free, the child is not going to be as accountable. I know that I have two daughters who were both homeschooled. One graduated in 5 semesters with a 3.99 plus GPA, and now is a second grade teacher, and she's one of the best rated teachers.
I'll bet.
Because and she started teaching her younger sister the same thing she learned 2 years before. Now her younger sister struggled in school. She only got an AA degree, but she's now chair of the board of the Hollywood, California Chamber of Commerce.
Well, there you go. Listen, proud dad, I appreciate you, and I bet you could have used some of that money for the homeschooling since we're paying for it in taxes anyways, right?
It would have been so much easier, and my retirement fund would be...
Mine too. All right, thanks for your great call, Warren. I couldn't agree with you more. Let's go to Janet in Fort Worth. You're on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBAP. Hi, Janet.
Hi. I want to take a different angle. I mean, I want homeschools and private schools to be free from government rulings, mandates, and demands. And I think that most parents that homeschool also want to be free from constraints that the government public schools have.
So then we let the civil rights issue go to the wayside then?
No, the question is, with the voucher money, will there be strings attached? Because everything the government funds, it puts demands on the organizations or the entities.
We'll have to see what the proposal is.
Yeah, but to me, if it's going to work, it has to be without any strings attached.
Well, I mean, they're probably going to say certain things that are, I don't know. We'll see what it says. We'll have to look at it. All right. I appreciate the call. Okay. I can't debate because there's no proposal to look at and talk about, that I support it tonight, other than saying I support it. You just want strings attached. So fair enough. I appreciate your call, Janet. Let's go to Ken in Arlington. You're on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBAP.
Hey, Chris. Hey, I don't have any kids, but my neighbor does, and I know she gets up early in the morning, her and her kids, and take them to her parents' house so they can get a better education.
So she takes them to the parents' house so they can take her to school, the kids to school. Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah, to a different school.
Yeah, that's why Condi says people that can move to the nice neighborhoods to get the best schools, like the one across the street from Stanford in Palo Alto, they have a mini Stanford high school. They're getting an amazing education. So, yeah, I can't blame them. I'm against doing that, but I can't blame them. And, one of our callers earlier in the last segment was saying the amount of money, $8,000 or something like that. It's actually, one of the last proposal was $10,000. We'll see what it is. But even if it doesn't pay fully for the school, he talked about the high school that he wants to go to, the private school that he wanted his kids to go to. It's $21,000. He said, I looked it up. He's right, of course. But listen, could you imagine getting $10,000 off that, sir? Could you have afforded $11,000 instead of 21? Probably. I don't know. If you're looking at it, it's 21. You probably won't be able to do it 11. I don't know. But it's something I support, and what the details are will have to be worked out, and then we'll have to see if we support that or not. Okay. Mark in Benbrook, you're on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBAP. What's up?
Hi. I don't think it's a civil rights issue. I think it's important, and I'm in favor of it, but I have a trouble when it comes to using the word a right. I mean, that would mean that education, a publicly funded education, would be a right.
Well, it is.
And I don't think it is.
Okay, so wait, why do we pay for illegals to go to public school when no one in this state that's Republican wants to?
We shouldn't.
Well, we have to.
We shouldn't.
It's some kind of a federal law, is my understanding.
But the law doesn't mean it's a right.
That's true. You're right about that. You're right about that. But I just consider it a civil right to be able to get an education that's decent.
If it's a right, then the school it should be absolutely required and defined and identified in the Constitution.
Okay. Well, I don't know about that.
States. Yeah, I mean that's what we're talking rights. Civil. Even though the word "civil" is in front of it, it's still we're saying that publicly funded education is a right.
Let me ask you this: if somebody is in America and they're of school age, and there's no homeschools, no nothing, do they go to jail if they're not educated, like putting their kid in school? Or the kid could they lose the child custody?
I'm not sure if that's the same issue, but no.
Well, I'm just telling you, it's not. Again, it's a law. I don't know if it's a right, but I can tell you this: I consider it one. I do appreciate your call, Mark, and thanks for your call. All right, coming up next, Hunter Biden, his upcoming tax trial. How worried should he be? Also, bias is quite possible going on in the IRS program for auditing refundable credit returns. And audits are about to surge. Tax penalties on underpayments have surged. And if you are an employer and you got a COVID tax credit, you want to hear this too. All this is coming up next with my friend and my sponsor, Randy Martin from IRSprob.com. I have several questions for you. One is, it's coming up not too distant future here. Hunter Biden will be standing trial on tax evasion and other charges, right. This fall. Actually before the election, obviously, way before the election. So, how worried would you be if you were Hunter Biden, and why should he be worried if he should be worried a lot?
It was actually supposed to be. It was scheduled for today, but they got. He requested a stay for an extension on it, and so they granted it to him until September. I'd be really worried. I mean, the guy looks. There's something wrong when someone thinks that it's not a problem to write off as a business deduction hookers and blow.
Right.
There's a lot of deductions that he put in there that were just flat out fraudulent. I don't think he can get around that anyway. That's a little bit more than just a oops, and the amounts of it is fraudulent. Now, will they get him on that? I don't know. I think that what I'd really like to see them go after is the funds that were never reported. To see if they can go after some of that, the Ukrainian
Burisma money,
the gas money, But because if they can show that he didn't report him, then they could really have him on something, more tangible. That's not that it's easier to prove fraud on that, because that's the key here is will they be able to prove that it was intentional. And therefore be able to go after the fraud charges.
What kind of punishments could he actually face here? Or go ahead, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
And then what would your advice be as a CPA? If you were his CPA, what would your advice be, and what kind of punishments do you see him maybe facing? I know you're not a lawyer with this stuff, but
yeah. No, I mean, there's up to years in prison. I forgot what it is exactly for this, but for every year of this, there's years in prison, and also not to mention just restitution. The government wants you to pay back any amount that they lost, basically, along with penalties and interest. So they got. I think they would definitely have him on that if they can prove that it was intentional. Also, one thing that they do have him on is just tax evasion, plain old tax evasion, in that it's obvious that he had the funds quite often to pay the tax, but he didn't.
So is it more, since it's more egregious, he's got millions of dollars coming in, and he does tax fraud and doesn't report taxes, isn't that probably going to give him a much worse punishment, would you imagine?
If they can prove it, they've got to convince. This is not tax court. This is federal court. So, they've got to prove it and get a jury to agree with them. So it's anybody's guess what they'll get approved.
What do you think about, I forgot to put this in the list of things to talk about tonight. What do you think about Donald Trump talking about taxes? He won't tip, no more taxes for tips. Is that a big deal? Is that a good deal? What do you think about that?
Right now the limit on that is $40 a year. So if you make over $40 a year, you're supposed to report your taxes. That's just ridiculous. There's way too much of trying to account for it. There's more money spent on keeping it in order and all that than there is in taxes. There needs to be some large exemption amount for tips, and I don't know what that number is, but it needs to. A lot of these folks that are working for tips. My son's one of them. He's working at a
Joseph
restaurant in Heath, and
is it Joseph?
No, it's Charlie, our high schooler.
Yes,
but they need to have some way that they can just say, okay, X number of dollars is exempt. And I'm not talking about some of these waiters at the high end restaurants that we hear about making six figures.
Yeah.
But, just normal people, busting tables in a diner, waitressing, waiting on tables. It just seems like there's way too much time and effort spent trying to squeeze taxes out of them.
Randy, bias possible in IRS program for auditing refundable credit returns. This is. Do you think that's true? And if so, what kind of biases are you seeing out there?
Yeah, everybody's screaming racial bias on this. I mean, what kind of gets me on that is the tax return. Nobody knows the color of somebody on the tax return. It's as anonymous as it comes. I mean, and even more, the programs that they do to audit they're definitely not looking at anything racial. So the argument there is that there's certain segments of the population that are certain maybe minority groups that get audited more than others. Unfortunately, in some areas of town, there's I guess a higher propensity to have these unregulated tax preparers that don't have the community's best interest at heart. Mm-hmm. And we come across these guys quite often, and it's sad that they really take advantage. I had a conversation with a gentleman today that through no fault of his own, the company was actually that he had is doing his taxes for like the last 4 or 5 years. They would have him sign, and then they would actually go and submit a different tax return that was all jacked up on deductions that were false and false donations. And the IRS is investigating them. Unfortunately, though, the taxpayer gets left holding the bag in a deal like this.
Now, Randy, I got a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. It just puts them in a bad situation. I'd love to see the IRS using some of these funds instead of going after and increasing audits and going after the actual taxpayer. Go after these fraudsters. There's a list of different types of frauds that are taking place right now, and I don't see the IRS being strong enough on that and going after the fraudsters. I'd love to see some funds put after that, put toward those goals.
I have a few more questions I want to ask you about. Can you hold?
Sure.
All right, I want to talk about what penalties we should be concerned about and how we can avoid them. IRS surging penalty is costing Americans billions from Wall Street Journal. Advice for business owners who got COVID employer tax credits when we see the IRS is going to reject billions of dollars in COVID employer tax credit claims. That's a big deal, possibly for many clients, for you, possible and such. And then if we need to amend our returns and avoid penalties, you have some advice on that straight from your Twitter feed. So stand by. Randy, if folks want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, give us a call at 214-214-3000. That's 214-214-3000, or look us up online at irsprob.com. That's irsprob.com.
All right, stand by, brother. We'll get to you in a second.